Welcome to Soft Cock Appreciation Week 2024. I invite you to get comfortable as you join us for what I like to call cockversations, discussions, or grown folk putting their heads together and sharing ideas in authentic and real ways. Now be aware we don't hold back in our language, and what follows is not for overly sensitive or easily kerfuffled ears. And before we dive in, remember, what is shared here is not meant to be, nor is it a replacement for medical advice. Whenever you notice changes in your body or that of a loved one, especially in how the penis is functioning, please seek out medical consultation. What the penis is saying could literally save a life. Thank you for supporting us. If you take away something useful from this, please let us know. Write a review, spread the word, and keep coming back for more. Are you ready? Let's do it. Hello, everybody. This is Erica Leroye. I am your hostess for Soft Cock Appreciation Week 2024. And I am very excited today to have a new friend in my life, Percy Hawkes, with me. And we are going to be sharing ideas with you today that come out of his work as a therapist working with men and men's groups, as well as his work as a surrogate partner, and his work in the queer community, creating a new health center or a new mental health center, right? Is that an appropriate way to say it? In Portland, Oregon. And I know that's been a passion project for you for the last year. And I'm so excited that you have brought it to life, Percy. So yay, I'm so excited for our conversation today. Let's start out. I'm going to let you, I just introduced you, but I want you to introduce yourself as well and fill in any gaps in terms of what you think is important for people to know about who you are as an individual and what it is that you bring to the world professionally.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Percy Hawkes, and great to be with you, Erica. Again, I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm a mental health therapist and a surrogate partner, separately with different sets of clients. And I've been a therapist for about 8 years. I think important to this conversation is that I've been a part of the Mankind Project also, or the New Warrior Training Adventure, for about 20 years and hosted men's groups in my home once or twice a week for about 12 years before doing this as a therapist also. And I just see a big need. A couple other things that might be relevant. I grew up in South America with English as my second language from parents of two continents, so kind of a culture observer. And because of my identities, a gender observer ever since I was a kid, just like, why do humans do these things or have these expectations for each other? And also growing up in a high demand religion where many topics were tabooed. So I find great relief in groups where humans can access hive mind and just talk about the things that are on their minds without making it forbidden to speak about certain things. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
That's so juicy. I appreciate that. I'm just such a fan of human development and like, who are we as these crazy human mammal creatures
Mm,
walking around the planet thinking that we should know so much more than what we do know? and or that with all that we do know, noticing how our particular human mammal mind still trips us up. Right.
particularly in isolation, but when we get with other brave, conscious people that
Mm.
aren't striving just for conformity, but are striving to wake up, or then yeah, it's a popcorn. There's all sorts of aha moments. We need each
Yeah.
other too.
We do. We do. Good. Well, we're going to talk more about that. Let me just ask you before we begin. I know that not everybody resonates with the word cock, and we have Soft Cock Appreciation Week, as our overall banner. But I always, like to hear, does that resonate for you? Is there a word you would prefer we use today? I mean, I tend to switch up the language no matter what, but what resonates for you? What do you like to use as somebody who has a penis? What's the word that most resonates for you?
I think cock or penis, they have slightly different feels to it, but
Yeah,
yeah, and
great.
noticing that men often give names or call it Peter or and that's all acceptable and part of the experience too.
Yes. Yeah, or my junk. I get that a lot. I'm like, "Oh, here, poor penis. It's not the junk." But,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Great. Okay, well, let's dig in. So one of the things that I'm really curious about, one of the many things that I'm really curious about as I've come into this role in Soft Cock Appreciation Week is really getting deeper into the challenges around male communication, especially when it comes to sexual function, sexual health. I feel like it's pretty hard for men to talk at all about mental health, physical health, and well being until maybe there's a crisis. But that even when there is a crisis, sexual function still tends to be the place where it's hard for men to talk with their peers, with their partners, with health and medical providers. It becomes very isolating. So I'm really curious, what is it that you have? Well, first of all, I guess, what do you observe by facilitating men? You know, you have more experience than I do around um, what you're hearing, especially in groups. And what are the things that you have discovered, both more recently and in the, you know, what you shared in the intro, in the 20 years that you've been in group experiences with men, that are helpful, so that if someone was listening or watching us today and they were like, you know, what I want to take out of this is, you know, if I talk to my friends, maybe there's something that actually could be life saving if I'm more
Mm,
open to talking about how my penis works, what's happening in the bedroom, what's happening in my relationship, that maybe I can open this conversation up, but I have no idea how to do that. So that's an overall question.
yeah, yeah. Just have lots of thoughts about that. In our Western culture, there's a lot of mixed messages for people and silent expectations around gender and sex and sexuality and genitals and what's allowed and not allowed. And I think it's awkward and isolation is awkward. And we know that men, um, when not doing well, end up either committing crimes or killing themselves or ending up in prisons at much higher rates. That this gender has some specific potential setbacks or vulnerabilities, and so doing the awkward thing and just talking about the things is actually such an important breakthrough. And men are hungry to address the real things, including the things that sit in their mind and in their hearts for hours of the day or of the week, that there's almost no place to like divulge or discuss that.
Mm,
But that men are looking, or at least I see a lot of men that are looking for places to get real and talk about the stuff that's really impacting them and perplexing them or join them. And so I think just starting the conversation, planting the seeds, normalizing and saying the words cock or my penis or
right.
erections, like these scary words. Um, yeah, just starting to address this, whether in self-divulging or as a clinician and surrogate partner, normalizing by saying, yeah, I see lots of people that have worries about this or thoughts about that. And that kind of opens the door. And most people take that opening to then divulge a little bit. And then
Mm.
it's kind of a back and forth conversation.
Mhm. Do you find, like, one of the things I notice, and, you know, I work just one on one, but one of the things that I notice, even in my, you know, talking to someone while I'm sitting with them at the airport, or, you know, often what happens for me is when I'm, especially, you know, when I'm talking with a man, just casually, and they say, what do you do? And I say, oh, you know, I'm a, you know, men's sexual health and well-being guide. And they say, what does
Mm,
that mean? And I say, well, my specialty really is working with, you know, erectile flow and function. And then the moment I open the door to saying aloud that which is taboo, then I either see, oh, and they like don't know what to do with me, right? Or there's this flooding of, oh, well, let me tell you, I have this, or my
Mm,
brother had this, or my father had this, and is this normal? And is this okay? So, do you find in your work that it's that just being the person to open the door is the pivotal piece to getting men to open up to you? Or do you find, especially man to man, right? Because I'm a woman doing this, that man to man, it takes something more to be able to get men to open up and feel comfortable to share with you things that are going on with their sexual well-being.
mm. I think that's the beauty of groups, especially groups that are uh, awake versus individual interactions, is that there's a normalization, a mirroring. Men get to look around in a group and see bravery or self-disclosure. And I think normally, speaking non-sexually for a second,
Mhm.
it's kind of not normal in our society for men to divulge to each other, I'm afraid of this, or I'm sad about this, or I'm feeling lust or anger and don't quite know what to do with it. But when men see other men disclosing these things and the other men nod and somebody else shares something really rapidly in minutes, men realize, oh, this is a place where I can talk about those things and I'm not judged, whether it's emotional disclosure or sexual disclosure, and particularly spaces where there's not a drive to conformity or like one rigid right way to do things,
Mm.
whether it's religion or AA or mandated anger management courses, uh, when it's when there's a allowance for nonconformity and people can share different experiences and be accepted, um, then there's like this, like you said, this flow of sharing. So of course, I'm biased. I think groups are a phenomenal environment that accelerates a lot of this disclosure. And then we forget about we do that initial scary thing and talk about the things. And then we can actually get into strategies or self
Mm.
acceptance and nuancing further the evolving and healing that we need to do.
Hmm. Why do you think that this still feels so vulnerable and taboo for men to come together in a group and share what is real in their lives? Like, what is it that, what do we need to do as a society to be, I've been saying recently how part of Soft Cock Appreciation Week is actually that most men walk around soft most of the time. So part of Soft Cock Appreciation is actually just appreciating men,
Mm,
period, right? Which
yes,
is
they are.
something, as they are, that we live, for plenty of good reasons, but we live in a place where there's a lot of fear and projection about what masculinity is. And I think there's, in my world of trying to come to a better understanding of why erectile function rates are so high. It just seems so strange for me as in the world of healthcare, like to be like, oh, yeah, of course, we're going to have 50% of men at 50 not have a functioning body part. And there just seems to be a lot of what I call cock confusion right now, right? Like, I don't know if it's okay for me to be like this. I don't know if it's okay for me to be vulnerable. I don't know if it's okay for me to be turned on. I don't know if in this situation, I'm allowed to be. So, what's your sense of what's going on, as the men who come to you and share with you? What are you hearing? What are you noticing about, like, kind of the state of the world as it's projected about men versus the reality of how men really are living in the world these days?
Hmm. There's some important questions in there. I don't know if I remember all of them, but I'll attempt to answer
Okay.
as best. Um, I think there's some polarities. There's a performative nature to our culture, and that a man must do this and be hard and penetrate, and to get right
Mhm.
to the point. But then there's this drive. Humans are also aware that let's not perform and let's be real. And social media reels are a performance of sort, and many are trying to move towards an authentic share and not putting on the makeup or not
Mm.
uh not doing things just for the bait of it, but for the authenticity of it. And so, like, how do we get more men in groups? I mean, I see people coming. I, I I see the flow of men that are wanting, knowing that they need male friends, knowing that they need to
Mhm.
talk with other males about male things, and most of them are heterosexual men that are partnered with women and find that intensely valuable, and actually are more comfortable with women and find it more difficult to talk with men, and knowing that they put themselves with other men wanting to
Mm.
and succeeding and feeling more comfortable with men in those contexts, and then they take it out into the world with their coworkers and brothers and fathers, and begin to initiate more substantial real conversations that they're really thinking about, instead of just the sports, as valuable as that
Mhm.
is. um and I, I think also the other thing I wanted to say in there, hopefully I'm hitting
Mhm.
uh the points that you're looking for, is this notion of, you said a large number of men, maybe 50% of men after a certain age, have erectile issues. I'm wondering how much of that is medical, biological, and how
Mm.
much of that is psychological, cultural. And when a man is, whether expected to by a woman or by other men, to like be hard, and what pressure that's kind of an involves is slightly voluntary and largely involuntary blood flow matter of arousal and focus and pleasure. And so, I'm convinced that it's that more men in their upper ages could have more erectile function, letting go of this psychological piece.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, we know this from the work that you do in surrogate partner work and the work I do in sexological body work, that when we create space for there not to be pressure on the penis, but we're really present with the whole person, then there's more of an energy and an invitation to not have to be the one who directs everything, right? That are the people we work with aren't they there isn't a pressure that they have to already know what to do, right? And I
And
think that for a lot of men there's a lot of societal expectation that you're going to come to especially the sex date with all of the, I know how to read your body, I know what to do, I know, like, it's all
mm,
on me to be able to read the room. And to be honest, at least in my world, most of the men that I work with maybe have some sensory motor, maybe a little bit of neurodivergence, and reading the room actually isn't something that comes naturally. So we're putting a lot of pressure to know how to do things. And between having bad sex education and bad, what's soft skills, not even bad, just underdeveloped soft skills in certain areas, then it is a lot of pressure on the penis. And I agree, that's one of the things that I'm find really curious to, in this quest for me of why these numbers is, yes, there are all these medical things. And that's why with Soft Cock Appreciation Week, we say, on the one hand, we're appreciating that sometimes being soft is a sign from your body to your mind saying, hey, something's going on here, whether it's something medical or something relational or something interpersonal inside of yourself, or if it's or and also, if you show up soft, there's plenty of other things you can do, right?
can I share a couple of graphic things?
Yes,
I
please.
think that display the point, and
Yes.
as appropriate, I share similar things with clients, if they're ready for it, and it helps to open the door just to like name things directly. One experience I had, eh, I was in a dungeon, with scene with a fair number of friends, and there was this young man, um, who one might assume erections should work fantastically for, but was quite worried about his penis and
Mm.
trying to touch it and get himself going. And and he was just so worried, and it wasn't working, and he was blind to like the affection and admiration of so many
Mm.
people wanting to connect and touching him, and somebody went and tied up his right arm, which was using, tied it behind his back, and then his erections worked just fine. Um,
Ah.
because he wasn't able to like focus on it and fuss. He had that taken away from him and was able to take in more things. And then his psychology is like, oh, people like me.
Mm.
I'm enjoying this touch, and then things happened. And secondly, I think also in talking with lots of heterosexual men, and in doing their work in sex therapy, there's this idea that I should be hard, I should penetrate, I should perform, but I should please her. And I find so many men that don't know where their pleasure is, and that I think their primary objective, they think that their idea is to lick or suck or like do all the right things for her, but lost in the equation, where's his pleasure and what
Mm.
feels good? And it's not a binary, it's a both and situation, but that second part gets lost on a lot of heterosexual men of what feels good to me when I'm with her. And
Mm.
can we have that? I mean, there's the polarity of some men just think about that, but most men I interact with are quite conscientious about their female partners, and maybe to the exclusion of themselves,
Mm.
which which connecting the dots relates to their penile responsiveness.
Right. Right. That's beautiful. No, I appreciate you sharing both of those. Those are really great examples of, you know, what really happens, right? In the
Mm,
mind body connection, right? That,
mm,
we can be over focused, and in our over focus, we can lose our own connection to what is actually happening around us and what is actually happening inside of us, right?
mhm, mhm.
So that's beautiful. Um, excuse me.
Bless
So
you.
well, maybe that kind of leads us into a little bit about body acceptance, right? So this is a theme that I'm curious about, again, from your point of view of listening to men, facilitating men. What I can share is, and this is something I thought of this when you were talking at the beginning, that I'll always remember I had this one client who, he was really struggling with body acceptance for where his body, had come to around his erectile function. And we ended up doing a lot of deep dive work. And one of the things that he said to me was, I never knew that becoming conscious was going to be this hard. Right. And that the subtext of that was, shit, like my erection was the thing I never had to think about before. Right? Like this was the thing that, I saw something that turned me on and I got turned on, and I didn't have to like think about what turns me on. I didn't have to think about, what was going on. It just happened. And now I have to I'm going through a whole journey to using my sexual function as the entry point. I'm going on a whole journey to become a more conscious person, and that is a little intense and big. So I'm curious, what that brings up for you, and both in terms of facilitating men's path of awakening into more consciousness, and then also in this world of body acceptance. I think that, I can say as a woman that there's been a lot more, at least external messaging over the last few decades around female body acceptance. But I think that, from my point of view, it seems like we're still a little bit behind on that. And yet the male body changes. It's not fixed, right? There's a big change as we age, or if there's illness or stress or other things. And I just see a lot of men struggling with, I want my body to be what it once was, and not being, and really having to work in a different way around accepting this is who I am now.
Yeah, yeah. And that piece that you shared about women's being shared with me before about women's being aware that their body will go through changes, and men possibly not being aware culturally that their body will go through changes has been impactful to me. I've shared it with a couple of my men's groups, and they've come back the following week having thought about that
Mm.
as well. But I I think that men have this beautiful uh, body acceptance, and not at the same time. On the one hand, men stereotypically accept themselves as they are without moisturizer, without just like put on the
You
shirt and
you
get
didn't
out
put
there.
foundation on today,
Uh,
Percy?
and and there's something to be celebrated about that. That it's like I show up, but there's a blind privilege to it. And then on the other hand, there's more and more the sexualization of men on
Mm.
magazine covers. There's the trend going in the opposite direction,
Mm.
where there's now this compare men are comparing themselves and their pecs and their shoulders or penises or this kind. I think we always have, but now it's becoming maybe a bit more mainstream. So it, I think back to how to help men with their or what I'm seeing about men with body image. I think men generally don't talk about it unless somebody opens the door, whether the facilitator or another man. And fortunately, in men's groups, there's always two or three brave ones that will just say the darnest things, both therapeutic and not.
Mhm.
And it's a blessing, or it's an advantage in the group, because then if three or four others were thinking the same things and the one dude said it, um, that's a door opening, and there's like a rush to like me too, or
Mm.
yeah. And my experience is a little different in this respect when I'm in the bedroom, or when there's an expectation for penetration, and so I just think that's yeah, those are some thoughts
Mhm.
around body image.
Mhm.
um
So what one of the things I want to point out that I'm hearing is be the brave one, right? To be the brave one to say something, because as risky and vulnerable as that might be, that's actually where someone has to start, right? That's right. Someone has to start. And, if you're in a facilitated environment, then the facilitator kind of gets things going. But if you're not in a facilitated environment, then what is the thing, like, I want to encourage people. I think we're trying to encourage people to, even if you're, having a beer with a buddy or taking a walk or you finish doing something, to be the one who says, hey, I've been noticing some changes in my body, and this is what I'm, are you seeing this too? We're both in our 40s or 50s, or like, wow. Because I know women, we do that. I have a women's group that, that I am part of every week, and we're talking about the hairs that are growing on our chin as we're entering menopause and in menopause, and we're talking about the changes in where our nipples are and our dryness. And it's just, there is
mm,
an element that, not everybody, because there certainly are lots of people who come culturally, maybe from more religious backgrounds, or where this conversation is more taboo. But I could say overall, in general, you're going to hear women talking more openly about how their bodies function, especially their sex and their sexuality in general, more, even though the stereotype might be locker room talk. That locker room talk isn't like, I'm really having trouble getting it up. What do you guys do?
it's a I mean, no pun intended. It's a thing of planting seeds, of like having a little bit of a conversation, and maybe your buddy, the dude from work that's been your friend for 15 years and you play basketball with all the time, and you want to get a little more real with him. He might, it, with one-on-ones, it's more of a journey. It seems, of like
Mm.
sharing a little bit, and then a week later, and then a month or 2 years later, your buddy might say, "I haven't had sex with my wife in years,"
Mm.
and something that he's tracking, and now you're the person that he can share that with.
Mm.
Um, so I think groups are a little different. Some groups, it's an accelerated sharing, but one-on-one, there's possibly a different dynamic. And again, depending on the individual, some men with a little divulging, are like hungry and ready for those more substantive conversations.
Mhm. Nice, nice. You mentioned, I want to backtrack. You mentioned that you brought up this idea of body acceptance to some of the men that you work with in group, and that they came back. This is one of the beautiful things is plant, like you said, plant a seed, let people sit with things, and then, oh, right. So, are there any things that came up that you can share with us that you feel comfortable sharing with us in terms of ahas that people had as a result of being given that seed to sit with?
Um, yeah, yeah, particularly with one group, without revealing their
Mhm.
personal information. Um, there was the one man that jumped in the first week and said, "Here's let's talk about erections," and he just said, "Yeah, sometime I'm getting older and I I really want to with my wife, but we're trying to have a kid, and
Mm.
that's a lot of pressure, and it's not always responds how I like." And there was some awkwardness in the room, but two or three other people shared, and then we went on. So fast forward to the next week, and men divulge more about their changing bodies and sexuality and expectations around their performance, their function. And then we got into a really beautiful conversation about existential crisis
Mm.
slash like what's the point of life and meaning. And two or three of the men cried
Yeah,
together as they
yeah.
shared some things, not necessarily sexual related, but let me just jump ahead a tiny bit and say that I think that this is an idea from a poet, James Broughton, that the penis might be conceptualized as the tip of the heart. And
Mm.
when the penis is touched, maybe even metaphorically in conversation, uh, there's a normalization, a relief in the room. Like, oh, now these are my brothers, and
Mm.
I can talk about like what's the point of being alive sometimes,
Mm.
and that like existential things where we get real and cry together. And this started because we started talking about the penis,
Right.
and then it went somewhere else, even more profound. Not that the penis is not profound, but like we're talking about the heart, and
Yeah.
these chakras are connected, and so when there's openings in one area, then there's maybe in the heart and in
Mm.
the in the wisdom and in a connection to the cosmos and to the collective. So yeah, those were some of the impacts
Mm.
from like erectile function.
That's so beautiful. I mean, when you first said we went from the penis to the existential to, the real that even brings up the tears, I laughed because to me, there's this joy in opening up the conversation can lead to all of these other levels that you just described. I've seen that too. And it's like, because it's a relief. I think opening up
Hmm.
this quote unquote taboo, right? Of just saying the word penis, saying the word erection, talking about this, then to have it go to what you just described. And I have to say, like, the other thing that just came up for me as you were, I mean, how beautiful, the penis and the heart. And where you took it is someplace I haven't heard, and it resonates so much with me because, like, on the healthcare side of it, one of the things that is said over and over and over again is, you know, heart healthy diet is a penis healthy diet. Take care of your heart, you're taking care of your
Mm.
penis. So it's like it's
Whoa, that's
often this
big.
way of like, if you anything you do for your heart is going to be good for your penis. Right. And I like that you just brought in at this deeper level the connection also of, what you do for your penis can be good for your heart on this level of the emotional, of the spiritual, of the existential, and the esoteric, because I think there's also, there can be a lot of negative self talk that happens for people who have a penis when their penis isn't doing what I want it to be doing. Right. And that kind of chatter that goes on, the self-defeating, something's wrong with me, that could lead to suicidal depression, that can lead to mental health challenges because of the way that we're not giving ourselves love and compassion and care.
And like, if I could share a personal anecdote too, it's just that with the previous part, and I guess I should say I identify as queer or gay as well. I know if I don't say that, some people are like stuck on like, what is he? And all their mind is like right there before, and, and it's harder to pay attention to the words. So just to say that to get that out of the way,
Mhm.
um, that had a partner uh, that would hold me in the
Mm.
nights as we'd fall asleep there in the genitals, and
Mm.
just like a cupping. And when he first started to do that, many times I cried and I felt like really touched, like he cares about me, like
Mm.
this is really beautiful. And there was not it wasn't touch, it wasn't demanding touch like is so often experienced. It was a nurturing touch that didn't care whether I was hard or not. It was just there.
Mm.
And I've shared not that exact experience, but Body Electric School uh, does some of that. But I've shared that concept with many people, and many men in heterosexual relationships have found great relief. Not the first time. The first time they're quite defended,
Mhm.
but the second or third time that it's mentioned in couples therapy, for example,
Yeah.
they can find great relief in um, knowing that their partner can touch them there and that they don't have to feel embarrassed that they're not hard,
Mhm.
and that it can actually feel really comforting and nurturing and emotionally bonding. And erections aren't a part of it. How can we welcome the soft genitals?
Yes, yes. That makes me think too, a lot of times when I'm working with men and we're trying to figure out what's going on with their erections, and one of the things I, ask kind of at the beginning is, do you consider your penis to be your friend? Like, is this your buddy?
Mm,
Or like what's actually the relationship that you have? And if it feels like the mind is putting a lot of pressure on the penis to perform or be something already, where I'll start with them just even with their masturbation practice is, just take, because I often will get, okay, well, how should I masturbate this week? And often if we're at the beginning, I'll say this week, just, do some cupping. Just hang out with it. Like just one,
mhm.
when you're watching TV. I mean, I like to say that I have a lot of grandchildren. And one of the things that I see as I've watched them age is it's pretty common around that like 2 to 5 year old period of life, no matter what gender they are, that there's a lot of like hand on the genitals and like either some, hair touching or thumb sucking or something just while they're watching TV or having a book read to them or something. But that there's a lot of self soothing that happens when we're just making contact with the nerve endings that are designed for downregulation. Right. And that can be a really, that it is really relaxing, but we tend to put a lot of pressure on my connection with you has to be a stroke or it has to be to get something going. So I appreciate that you brought that up.
It- in our conversations, that's been impacting when you've shared that to this. These highly innervated parts can be used for self-soothing and relaxing, and they don't have to like be driving anywhere.
Exactly.
And, and that's commonly seen in young people, and I see it in teens as well.
Mm.
Teens, before they are conscious of how they appear with others, can often do very like non-action self-soothing by holding themselves, like
Mhm.
holding their genitals.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Or just maybe this isn't exactly the thing, but when my kids were teenagers and I was the house that all the boys would hang out at. We had a big, family room, and there was during middle school, I swear I walked in on so many boys just humping my couch. Like they'd be playing video games and someone would just be doing a little something on the couch, just doing a little self-soothing while they were waiting for their turn. I was like, "Okay." So you guys need any snacks? Okay. Again, gotta love the boys. Um, good. So let's see. We have I have here, we were talking, okay, so body acceptance. I'm curious, like what is the age span of men that you are generally working with these days?
We've had from 19 years old to like 83, but currently our youngest is 23 and our oldest is I think 63.
That's wonderful. And
Yeah.
are the groups that you facilitate, is it then you're getting that spectrum of multi-age conversation, or are they grouped more by where they are in the lifespan?
No, it's just whoever signs up and is vetted in the
Mhm.
groups, and it's quite a random mix.
Mhm.
And most of the groups are primarily heterosexual men, but now for the first time in 8 years, one of the groups is 50-50
Mm.
uh, straight men and then non-straight men.
Great. So that brings up another question, just going back to the age piece, because there was a conversation I had with somebody over the weekend, and we were talking about how rare it seems to be for men to have opportunity for intergenerational conversation. And so that may be part of this issue about body acceptance, is that um, we're not getting men who have already like crossed the threshold of andropause and aging, being living examples for younger men of the fact that this is normal and natural to have this change.
I I think there's some societal pressures for older men to like mute themselves or
Mhm.
like fade into the background, which is not shared in most cultures of the world, but in this culture, they all there's that impulse which is stereotypical and not all follow. And then there's another drive that's not helpful, this American or Western drive to like surround yourself with peers.
Mhm.
And that's encouraged by adults, sort of like go play with your friends or your teenage friends. What are you doing hanging out with the adults or your grandma?
Mm.
And so there's whereas without those cultural expectations, I think there would, in Western cultures, there'd be a lot more intergenerational hanging out.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, my aim is to encourage like the more spontaneous, authentic interactions, however they are, and noticing that a lot of my men in the earlier 20s, well, they come in two camps. One is I need fathering,
Mm.
my father died, or I he's not very available, or the other camp, I want guys around my age in their 20s. Do your groups have other guys in
Uh-huh.
their 20s? I'm like, yes, we've got it all. um, so they come
Mm.
verbalizing those two intentions sometimes.
Mhm. I'm so glad you bring that up, because again, I think in a lot of the world that we're in the therapeutic world, there's there's been much more dialogue about, you know, the the seeking of like the mothering energy, and then for men, there's more of this, at least again in Western culture, there it's like, well, of course you have an absent father, right? That like that shouldn't impact you, that shouldn't be creating a longing or a sense of loss or a sense of, this is something that I want. And I feel like I've met, so many men where they do have father loss or mother loss, and the vulnerability of this, am I allowed to have these big feelings of loss in my life, is so, that's, however that impacts erectile health, I'm not sure, and I don't know if it necessarily is a correlate, but I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I've traveled and been in other cultures enough where, first of all, where there is just so much more respect for intergenerational living, right? That we live with our grandparents or great grandparents. I lived in Turkey with a family that had a great great grandma all the way down to a newborn baby and everything in between. And they were all, they all lived together. And it was really eye-opening compared to our like small nuclear family. And when I traveled in South America, just a lot more like the robustness of men as they age. And the more I work with men in their later years, when I work with men in their 70s and 80s, that loneliness, that isolation, that, and yet they have so much wisdom to offer.
I want to say just one piece about that is with Mankind Project, a men's organization that I worked with for a bunch of years and still work with and refer a lot of folks. The this concept about father hunger is one of their recurring
Mm,
themes that a lot of men come that they don't like preach or impose, but that comes organically in this work. Men that are drawn to men's work often are missing this masculine energy, whether it's father or peer. Um, and so a place to center that temporarily is really useful. And I think though it's just interesting to me as a queer 51-year-old man, how many young and middle-aged and older straight men come to me, but particularly there's been like 2 or 3 year clusters where I have like a little under a dozen young men in their 20s and 30s with fathers who have passed
mm,
literally or shot themselves or this kind of thing. And they sometimes might say out loud that I prefer my own age demographic, and yet they're coming to me. And there's plenty of therapists in their 20s and 30s, and they're so it somewhat surprises me, or maybe there's something unconscious going on.
mm,
And I in men's groups, I see this initial like American awkwardness around age and elderly quite dissipate, and often there's this admiration that goes for the elders, but also we had uh, a 19-year-old young man that stayed for many years in the men's groups, and he was viewed as kind of an elder
mhm,
as well because of he was just highly esteemed and beloved by the group. So I don't think there's a better age or a worse age. I think there's a normalization to bring it back to erectile function. There's a normalization about just discussing what's out there with each other that's really rich,
mm,
including all the age demographics and hopefully beyond age around to gender identity, political inclination, racial and identity intersections. Like the more rich the more diverse the group of people around them, the more need fulfillment and different need experiences that we hear that might unlock a little something for us
mm.
that without them wouldn't have been unlocked.
Yeah. Beautiful. So let's see. The question that is still lingering with me from all that you've said is, so let's say I'm somebody and I'm struggling, with my erectile health or my, overall sense of well-being, and I'm listening and watching us, and I'm like, okay, but how do I find a group? I'm curious about this. I think that maybe I would feel better. Like a lot of men don't, they maybe don't want to go to therapy and do the one-on-one. So this could be also that like first step for some. And what are your recommendations for how to tap in to a group, how to find a group, how to, vet a group, like what would that process, I know I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this, but
I have thoughts about that
uh-huh,
regardless.
exactly.
um, well, Googling men's groups near me
Mhm,
will bring up a bunch of things. And there's Psychology Today and some local in Portland, Oregon. We have some local sites, Portland Therapy Center, and that kind of thing that can be really rich. And you said accurately that a man needs to vet. what group and see if it fits his style. And I there's all sorts of groups that fit. There's AA groups that I highly recommend that are beautiful, but not all people go there or find that rewarding. I'm also highly recommend the Mankind Project's New Warrior Training
Mhm.
Adventure, and I'm not a part of them or I'm not receiving any endorsements by them, but have just invited a lot of queer men and my religious
Mhm.
father and many friends of all different types. And they have some ritualized, beautifully and modern, updated processes around sexuality and talking about cock
Mhm.
directly later on in the weekend and emotional intelligence. So there are a lot of organizations and social media. You can TikTok, pull up men's groups on TikTok, and
Right.
there's all sorts of things proliferating throughout the world. So the men's movement, in response to the very needed women's movement, uh, the mythopoetic men's movement, citing that men need each other as well. This is not a women hating
Mhm.
thing. This is a man loving thing. Um, is I forget where I was going, but uh, yeah, there's a lot out there, and it initially it can seem like going through the weeds.
Mhm.
There's sometimes it feels like there's not out there, but keep looking and keep asking, and I think you'll be able to find some things. Or shoot me an email or a message too, and I might send you some resources that I know of.
Great. That's fabulous. Yeah. Ooh, that makes me excited just to think of more people. Because I know, again, for myself, when I've been in situations where I had group work, where I got to be part of a group, it was so fulfilling. It's always so fulfilling, that hive mind piece of it, really, and feeling like you're not alone. I mean, the human existence can feel very lonely, and getting to be in a group where people are I mean, there was something, you thought I'll just share something personal that I haven't shared as part of Self Cock Week. But when you brought up, and it really touched me deeply, you brought up earlier about the man in one of your groups sharing about trying to get pregnant. And I think that, that's a huge pressure. And I think we often talk so much about what that's like, for the woman's side of it. But it's a big pressure on the man to perform, to make sure that, the sperm is, healthy and doing what it's supposed to do. And, there's a lot that comes up. There's a lot of stress. And I've definitely seen how the stress around we're trying to get pregnant is impacting, sexual function, right? Because we know that, and so then you're in that catch 22, similar of like being in the dungeon too, right? Which is, here's this thing I'm supposed to be doing and enjoying, and instead my body is like in freeze mode, or I kind of not being able to do this. So, um, in my own personal experience, I had a full term stillbirth, and my husband at the time and I afterwards, we went with our son to the Dougie Center, and for like 7 years. And the Dougie Center is for grieving children. And
Yeah,
while the children's program was going on, we had a space, and it was facilitated, but it wasn't therapy. It was just facilitated. And what I got out of being in a group, first as the new person in my grief, and then having the people in the room who were already 5 years down the line, right? And that I could see and this goes also with the going back and forth with aging too, but like, it was so helpful to be in a space and be able to see the place I am now that feels so raw and isolating and alone. These people were there, and now they're in another place in their recovery. And that that the fact that they didn't leave when they felt better, right? But that they were still there doing the work, because it's constantly evolving and there's community happening. It's so profound. And I was so grateful for that opportunity to both be embraced when I needed it, and then to still be there 7 years later, right? When other people came in and they could see, okay, here's where we are now, and to be able, and similarly, to be able to also talk about, like, even though I'm not where I was 7 years ago, there are still days that feel as raw as if it
Mhm.
was yesterday, right? And that's part of the human condition too, is that, the grief element of, whether it's losing for me, and that was body acceptance too, right? What happened to my body that made it so that, I wasn't able to bring my child, out into the world alive, right? There was a
True.
lot of that. So sometimes when I'm working with men and they're in this, like, I have so much grief around where my body is, I'm like, I know, but we can heal that.
Talk to a woman about grief in a stillborn birth. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
And yeah, and all that a woman goes through like on a monthly basis and pain and bodily
Mhm.
fluids. Men know so little in comparison, stereotypically speaking. Um,
Yeah.
and could learn a lot. So I do men's groups, but I'm really looking forward soon to doing some all gender groups.
Mm.
There's so much we can learn from each other.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. Okay, let's switch gears. That was heavy. Let's go to
Phew, okay,
move that through. Yes. Okay. So,
that's appropriate though.
yeah, no, it's right.
Bring it, bring
It's
it.
real, it's real.
Mhm.
And again, I bring it up because somebody in the course of my, like, isolation of feeling like no one else in the world but me is going through this, had the
Mm,
wisdom to say, there's a place for you, there's a group for you, there's a place your family can go, right? And so, that's, I want to, that's part of why we really want to have this conversation as part of Soft Cock Appreciation Week, is that, there's a way to find resources and build your care team that's beyond just your doctor or your individual sex therapist, or what you read online, but that, that this is another pathway, is to find connection through group. Okay, so switching gears, what are some things that you have learned personally and professionally about soft cock, about being soft, right? Some insights, and also, yeah, that you feel like can help expand the conversation for men and their partners, whatever gendered partner they have, about ways to be more accepting of the softness when it's there.
yeah. Well, thank you. First off, the soft cock still is innervated and feels good to touch, and maybe even feels better or has more flexible options there. And reading from your website, softcockweek.com, like somebody was mentioned something about like the swishing in the mouth
Mm.
and this kind of thing. But even like absent of overtly sexual activity, which yay to that, uh, there it feels good and that and people can come to orgasm with a soft cock, and some can't, some can. Not that orgasm is like, or ejaculation is the eventual pinnacle of all human experience, but it's one of them. So, first off, it feels good. I think another point would be saying out loud when partners are together to that a soft cock is okay.
Mhm.
Like, I welcome that. And sometimes that spoken out loud between a marriage or any other grouping of consenting adults is just such a relief and like takes a lot of pressure and weight and performance anxiety out of the question. And we're not doing that as a manipulation tool to then hope that the cock will get hard. We're doing that sincerely, like welcoming the soft cock
Mm.
as its glorious iteration, um, right right then and there. Um, let's see. Those are the two things that come to
Mhm.
mind around the soft cock.
Mhm. When you're does this come up in your surrogacy work? Do you work I don't know, do you work when you're doing surrogacy work, are you working more with people with a penis, people with a vulva? What's your
So far, I've worked with entirely penis owners and
Mhm.
open to working with others. Um, Gay men are a bit different, or queer men in uh, most of the men that come to surrogate partner work have had hundreds or thousands of partners, and their thing is not how the plumbing works. The thing is relational. Like, I'd like to have a second or a third date, or I'd like to have
Mm,
a relationship. So that seems erectile function is almost a non-issue, and maybe even less so now that with the availability of erection drugs
mhm,
and that kind of thing.
mhm.
Where this comes up more often is in heterosexual coupling, at least in my world, couples therapy with my different hat,
Yeah.
talking about soft cock.
Mhm. What's something that you wish that partners, so let's say partners of heterosexual men, that partners could understand better or be more willing to try when faced with their partner not having an erect penis when they think that they should?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's finding the pleasure and the connection points that she wants my body. She loves cuddling with me. She wants proximity to kiss me. Uh, and for her, if she, I see a lot of couples, heterosexual couples, where the female wants more sexual activity, and the man is, yes, I love you, honey. They're totally committed, but there might be less a desire discrepancy.
Mm,
He might want sex less than she does, and for whatever reasons, maybe as because I'm a gay therapist, I'm getting more of this demographic. And so part of my work too is it's with women of like, it's okay, he still loves you.
mm,
His penis is not an indicator of his love for you. And in fact, if there was some pressure removed in the shower, or however you're chasing him, which I don't say right
mhm,
off the bat, that there might be some more responsiveness. And we talk about spontaneous and responsive desire, but uh, allowing her to just enjoy his penis as it is
mm,
without being driven to a certain place, and introducing toys and other things that, or self-stimulation or masturbation side by side, or where there's 100 things that could be done that are not that one thing, which make that one thing more viable or likely to happen when there's a bunch of other things going on too.
yes. Mm, beautiful.
If I could add too, and this might scare the straight people, but I'm going to say it anyways. Would be and would be that uh, in the queer world, penetration, whether it's male male or female female or whatever iteration of human intersex and trans folks too, penetration is kind of a changing thing and is
Mm,
not always dependent on a hard cock. And people can be fairly versatile. And so I guess the invitation for the mainstream or for the more typical heterosexual presentation is, can I enjoy other parts of my body? Even if I'm a man, my nipples,
mhm,
my anus,
mhm,
the areas around my butt cheeks if I don't want my anus. How about my glutes in general, and her adoring me, and that beauty, and my thighs, and the highly innervated parts of the neck and the ears or the back.
mm,
Um, or if a person might be neurodiverse and doesn't like the light touching, or has some sensory uniqueness, finding the things, maybe it's a firmer touch or a weight of a person,
mm,
that there's that it doesn't have to all have to be about the penis and the hard penis. There's
right.
a bunch of other pleasure
Right.
points.
And what we say, the way that we say it, that can also, again, for
Mm,
the, if touch isn't your way of
mm.
receiving that, the eye contact, the like feeling, part of what you're talking about is something that I think is a theme that I'm seeing run through the week, which is, you know, it's nice for men to feel adored.
Men want to feel sexy and loved
Hmm.
and desired and admired just as much as
Yeah.
women. And men tear up when they,
Yeah.
in a men's group, when they admit that I want to feel sexy or I want to be pretty too. Some
Hmm.
men playfully say, but with a tear in their eye, when the group has built that kind of trust.
Mm. Yeah.
So, yeah, deep down, men want to be desired.
Yeah.
Just vibing off what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Yeah, there's a lot of deprivation around that of feeling really, because adoration and desire is about, it goes back to basic attachment, which is we want to feel seen, right? And we want to feel heard. And I like to say, we like to, and then the third piece, we want to feel seen, we want to feel heard, and we want to feel accepted for who we are today with room to grow into who we have yet to become. Right. And that when we're surrounded by that from the people who are our loved ones, that is the energy from a attachment theory point of view that promotes growth. And if what we're trying to do is promote growth with the penis as, the energy, that sometimes not feeling seen, not feeling heard, like speaking my desire, but feeling like it's just not being recognized, stating my wants, but having that be, well, only if you take the trash out, will I do that? Those pieces, and then not feeling like I, we met when we were in our 20s and now we're in our 50s. And even though we're growing up together, your idea of me is fixed and not fluid. I think that that's something that also, can just get in the way of, our body, mind, spirit's ability to rise to the occasion and to feel more levity and less gravity. Right. That's one of the things that I see in men is that there's just this the road of walking the path of manhood has a lot of gravity. It feels like, there's a lot that they're carrying on their backs that is weighing them down. And it's pretty hard when you're carrying a lot of gravity for the penis to be like, the penis likes levity. The penis likes, the ability, we need it, right? It
Playfulness,
has lightness.
lightness, non-judgment.
Exactly.
Yeah, and these are things that are good for all humans, and I think we're talking in very gendered language at the
Hmm.
moment, appropriately so. We're talking about penile, but to be adored and desired and loved and seen, isn't that what all humans want, regardless of where their genitals
Exactly.
hangs? These are universal, and perhaps our society has said that females want this and males want this. Um, don't humans want this? And I would just add to all the beautiful things you said about more levity or levity and gravity, more levity, less gravity would be being heard. I think I've seen in men's groups when being seen and deeply heard, including by other men with whom most men are not going to have penile interactions with other men. Um, but feeling deeply seen and heard and admired and loved and understood by other peers, then somehow some of that burden is lifted from their partner
Mm.
having to do that at home. And they can come home and then have this lightness and levity and relief. And maybe things go better at home in all sorts of ways, including erectile function, because there's been some playfulness
Mm.
and levity and self-acceptance and acceptance by peers. Just adding some thoughts that came to the
Yeah,
mind.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Wonderful. Okay. Is there anything else that we want to touch on?
No pun intended.
I
Um,
mean,
or pun
go ahead.
intended. Um, Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing that you've likely probably already mentioned in other of your interviews, this idea that my penis is an indicator of who I love or who
Mm,
I'm attracted to or who I have a connection. And so many men, without much thinking, might think that if my penis responds, she's the one, or he's the one, or they're the one. Um, when penile responsiveness is not necessarily tied to like, this is my person, or I should attach to this person.
mm,
So I think we put a lot more weight on penile function to like indicate a lot more things. And so I would just invite more conversations with more people about this to kind of nuance that thinking, and that my penis could work really well with this person, but maybe this person with whom my penis doesn't jump as quickly, but they're so fulfilling in all the other ways that maybe this other person is a better fit for me in a more dimensional way. um, that's something that maybe comes with age too,
mm,
and going through the grief of my body is changing, but also accepting like these connections in other ways that are non-penetrative and the yumminess of them. Not to the exclusion. We're not saying goodbye to this. We still, most of us probably still want that, but that's when I've grieved. Then I can start to see the opportunities that are there, in addition to this.
mm. Yes. Yes. Thank
Mm.
you. Thank you. Ah, good. Okay. Well, Percy, how can people connect with you if they want to learn more, if they want to reach out, if they have questions? You offered, being able to maybe help resource people. So, what is the best way for people to connect more with you?
Um, Currently, I don't have a lot of other websites that are not private or connections, except for just Google me on Psychology Today or on Google, Percy Hawkes, and you'll find me there quite easily and can reach out to me there.
Great. And say again, what is the name of the new center that you have in Portland?
It's the Portland Queer Healers
Mm,
Collective, and we see all people, but there's a clustering of queer healers.
wonderful. Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being part of Soft Cock Appreciation Week. I love your spirit. I always gain so much from listening to you and sharing ideas with you. And I'm really just grateful that our paths crossed. And I look forward to people, really hearing the perspective that you brought today. And that I hope that it will just encourage people to go out into the world and be a little bit more vulnerable with their friends and look for opportunities to connect with other men. And if you can't find it, then a group also just begins with more than two. So you can always make this happen. And the other resource that Percy shared today was Mankind. Is that what it's called?
Mankind
Mankind
Project.
Project,
Yeah.
and that could also be a good resource for, if the idea of maybe I would like to participate or I'd like to learn how to facilitate, that's another resource.
Welcoming of all men,
Well,
including men that have different cocks. Um, and thank you, Erica, for putting this out in the world and following Michelle Renee's initiation from
mhm.
last year. I'm touched by your heart and your conceptualization and knowledge that you bring to this. It's deepened and brought levity and beauty to my work as well.
Thank you.
So thank you, and I hope that a lot of people are talking about soft cock appreciation.
Yes. All right. Thank
All right.
you.
Take care.